Okay, so relationships. Okay, well, just immediately, of course, the inspiration was coming from some of the Course in Miracles lessons, which come on around later on in the book. Is with the Course in Miracles lessons, you're trying to see. You can either make an affirmation that they're sinless. That really, really works for me, because resentment is like looking at an individual and then thought patterns coming up about how bad they are. And if they're sinless, you're connecting more to their divine essence. So you're going more, it's like, once you recognize the place the Course in Miracles is taking you to is that place beyond thought and duality. Please do ask questions when I'm talking, if there's anything. So sinless means you're connecting to that eternal silence or stillness. The other thing the Course in Miracles does, which would also work, is to picture them as a divine figure. I'm writing this in my book as one of the tools, you see. So you can see that you see them as Christ or something like that. Or you can even practice in your head, like this person I feel grumpy at with, but I'm going to imagine them as Christ and shaking their hands and speaking to them. Or you can even, I'm able to do it, when you're with a person, or if you're sitting across from the person, like you visualize them as Christ, and then it starts to shift your interaction with them. So it's almost like breaking the thing with them. One of the Course in Miracles lessons is, and I've done a modified version in my book, which will be coming out soon, is, which I really, really like. So I've done. So you see the person, and then when you see them, you're probably going to see them as being ugly and dark and with a hideous expression or something like that. But then you ask the question, is there something nice about them? Did they ever have a nice smile? Or could you pretend there was something nice about them? And then you sort of see a gleam of light within their presence. And then you sort of amplify that light within them. And then you transfer that light to a friend who you really like. And you see the light in them being transferred to them, and that intensifying. And then you see the light come into you, and then the bright light. And you just keep cycling that through, and it will start to break the resentment. The other thing is, if I have like a huge resentment against another individual, is just to do and I was going to share about this, so I'll share about it anyway, which is about how to feel your feelings. Because resentment is just thoughts, images, and feeling, you see. So what naturally happens, like if you look at Hawkins' research, you see you've got, the resentment is like anger, which is a specific vibration. So if you sit down and just sort of close your eyes, and then suddenly the thoughts will start coming up, like, I don't like this person, or they're really horrible the way they speak to me. But then you let go of those thoughts, cancel the thoughts, or just disengage as soon as they start, the stories, and just trying to be with the feeling. And then suddenly, if it's an intense anger, the thought, you'll tend to want to go back into a story about it very, very quickly. But then just sort of either cancel or break that thought as it starts and be with the feeling. And eventually, as you do that, when you become better at it, you start to be able to... When I have like an intense resentment, in the beginning it's quite hard because the thoughts are going, and you're quite interested in the thoughts and the pictures. But then you just have the intention, break the interest in the pictures and the thoughts, and just be with the energy. And then at a certain critical point, usually with a resentment, it might take me 5 minutes. I'm off into the thoughts, and I'm trying to bring back, off into the thoughts, bring my back, just being present with the feeling. And then somehow it takes on a kind of a flow, and somehow now it starts to feel pleasurable, because you're just being with like pure anger without going into the distracting thoughts. And then at a certain point it starts to decrease. What you realize is, if you take out all the suppressed feelings, the anger, the resentment, or the guilt, or the shame, with an individual, at that point the resentment is gone, because you've now felt it all out. And you're actually now at a high vibration, which means you can't have resentment against them. When you are at a high vibration, you only see the beauty in another person, because all the filtering, you see, the levels of consciousness are, when you're holding anger, you're looking through dark sunglasses at another person. So you're just seeing, well, they look a bit like something out of a horror movie or something like that, because you're holding on to so much anger. So the belief systems and the energy field give you a very distorted, ugly, hideous image of them, and they seem quite threatening. You also are quite retracted in your body, and you can see them as a separate threat out there, and it looks like an imbued situation with fear or anger, and them being separate. And as you release the energy, suddenly you start to see them, they look a little more attractive now, and they look like friendly. And then you start to lose your sense of a separate self, and everything starts to become equally, you're more in the present moment. Everything's expanded, you see the plant is beautiful, they're beautiful when you see them. So it goes like that.
Yeah, and I was going to say,
yeah.
So that works as well for like a situation and a person, say if there's a specific situation, okay, there's like a really small example,
yeah.
Like I see my flatmate as like a really loving person, and I've done, the lesson where you see them, you ask them to show you the light in you.
Yes.
And it's been really helpful. But yeah, there are like specific situations, like my ego being like, oh, she doesn't take the bin out, kind of thing. And then like, it may be like you can see that person for who they are, but like, I guess what you were saying, like using the same thing on the situation, like just feeling out the feelings.
Oh yeah.
And focusing on the positive. Like, I try and focus on the positives of what she does do. And I think vibrationally, like, then stuff just gets done, and I know it's worked with other things where if you focus on someone's positives, generally you send out a more positive vibration and positives build. But yeah, when I focus on that negative stuff, or that negative situation, and it doesn't get done, I feel like I'm really feeding into it.
Yes.
A lot, and I guess I kind of intuitively know the answer, but yeah, with this specific situation, I mean, my ego's like, if I do this, I want it to be resolved, but then it's not about that, it's about like letting go of attachment to it. But would that be in the same way?
What do you mean in the same way?
As you would for a whole, like as you were describing with a whole person.
Yeah, it's a little bit different if it's just like you love them all the time, but when they don't put the bin out, because you get angry. So that's more like a specific thing that happens.
Yeah.
So with the specific thing that happens, for me, it's just when that it's like the trigger is like it pulls on a trigger, like it might pull on the trigger of all the times people disrespected you, for example.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like a huge reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the school teacher left you and forgot to come or something like that. And then there was this anger built up, or this feeling built up, but it didn't quite get felt out, and it happened again in school, and then again. And now that specific thing symbolizes, this concept within the ego. So now it triggers that. So every time you find anyone does a similar sort of symbolic gesture towards you, you get a trigger, and some feelings come up, which symbolize what that represented. So it's a great opportunity, because I want to let's say it symbolizes disrespect, for example, or forgetting it was your birthday, or whatever it might be. You see, so then it's like that. It's a trigger specific, and it opens up the doorway to the feelings that symbolize that thing that's happened. So then I want to feel it out. I just feel it out, because I'm feeling out symbolically that symbolism, that trigger that seems to have happened. And I feel it out. Sometimes what I do is like, oh, she hasn't taken the bin out. Then the murderous rage, you want to kill them or whatever, comes in, and it's like, okay, so that's a really intense feeling, because it's just happened. So I would often go into my room and feel the anger out. The other thing you do, and I give a modified version in my book, which I'll tell you now, is one of my tools, is one way to really get in love with a person is, even someone you hate, but you have to be willing to do it, but usually with most people that you've got to think, like think of the thing, you don't have to say it out loud, but think of the most loving thing. Can you think of a memory, something they've done that really made your heart warm? Is there a memory?
Yeah,
something really lovely.
Yeah.
Can you pick the best one that comes to mind now? Something really lovely they did for you, or behaved in a way?
Yeah.
You got one?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So what you do is, like, every day, like what I used to do, I'll share this with, because I have an amazing relationship with my mother now. I still live with my mother, but it was really quite bad before, was that amongst many things, Course in Miracles and 12 Steps, and Dr Hawkins, was the thing of remembering the happiest memory I had with my mother. You see, the happiest memory I had with my mother, and that memory, I might as well share it, was that when I was about 10, she would take me in the car to Brent Cross Shopping Centre, and she would allow me to buy any toy within the whole centre that I wanted, which was usually a Star Wars toy. And and we'd have lunch, you know, and that was an expression of love, you see. And I used to have this really warm feeling that I was really being loved. So that was one of the best feelings I had. So every day when I was doing my gratitude list and I said I'm grateful for my mother, I'd then play that, because I'm a hypnotherapist as well. I'm a trained hypnotherapist. So it's like, it's obvious what needs to be done, is you play it like a movie in your mind and you connect to the emotion of the love. So like if I'm doing it with you, okay, do you want to close your eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Close your eyes and just sort of blank your mind, and then imagine a big, huge cinema screen. Can you see a huge cinema screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now pick that memory and play it from the beginning as if you're in your body and reliving it, and see all the colours bright, hear all the sounds, really connect to the feelings, and play that memory so you really connect to the feelings. And take your time and just nod your head when you're done. Good. Okay, blank your mind and then start again. See if you can make it 10 times more intense and play it through again. And nod your head when you're done. Good. Do you want to do it again, or you had enough?
No, it makes you feel just really at peace.
Okay, and when you think of her now, how do you feel?
It's grateful, really happy for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did was I did that every day. I've stopped doing it now because there isn't any problem any longer. But so what would happen then was, like, all those resentments I had against my mum, eventually what happened was, by doing that on a daily basis, I think it was very powerful because I connected to the emotion of the memory on a day. It was a question. I connected to it on a daily basis, and then sometimes my mother would do something that I didn't like, and then what would happen is that memory would suddenly come up, and it would be like, I can't, you know, after she's been that nice and the memory is playing back, I can't really, like, get grumpy at her because she's done something I don't like. So it would, like, be a reminder of love, if you like. So that's another one to do with it. So what else can you do? I mean, there's the usual 12-step stuff, praying for her. There's Course in Miracles stuff, pray for a miracle to see her differently. I'm not a victim of this situation. You know, I pray for a miracle to see peace in this situation, rather than what I now see in it.
Making it meaningless sometimes happens, like if I'm just like focusing on that thing and I'm like, well, that's as meaningful as...
Yes.
And that normally takes like quite a lot of charge out of...
What is it? Is it, so yeah, so you just say that someone not emptying the bin is as meaningless as a chair, something like that? Yeah, which is meaningless as a table.
Can you do different objects each time you do something that's meaningless?
Yeah, you should do different objects.
Yeah.
You want to go?
And I look just like anything and everything, basically. But that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So anything, because like I have a real thing with music.
Yes.
I get really attached to, like when I'm listening to music, I'm like, oh, would this person like this music, and would this person like this music? Should I put it in this? It's like kind of weird. And then I can't play my music to other people because I get really anxious when other people listen to my music. It's quite a big part of my identity. My ego really wants to listen to the right kind of music, so I find it scary when I'm like. And today I was doing it with the song that I was listening to. I was saying, this song is meaningless, that lady's handbag is meaningless, this song is meaningless. So these are like different things each time.
Yes, and
and
sorry, what was the question again?
There wasn't a question. It was just it was more like because it was about the I mean, music's not a physical thing, but I definitely have a charge to it.
Yeah.
Like I have some kind of did I say that right? A charge.
Yeah, it does have.
It holds a charge
in
me
charge.
because
That's right.
am I very identified with music somehow.
And
the right types of music for everyone else.
and as you were doing, like, this music is as meaningless as the chair. And you listen to the music, then you look at the chair and you say that it's just as meaningless as the chair, and it's just as meaningless as the light bulb.
Yeah.
It's just as meaningless as that plant.
Yeah.
So as you're doing that, and then you listen to the music after doing that for, a minute or so. How does the music? Do you feel so intensified in your emotional response to the music?
Straight after doing it, I just stopped. I did feel I could just let the song play through, whereas normally I'm just pressing next to try and find the right song.
So it's working. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're letting go of your huge identified attachment, and now you're letting life unfold and flow as it's going. Which is so yeah. That's what I do. It's a very good thing, and that's exactly it. I want to let go of all my highly identified attachments to things in the world, because then, of course, the ultimate beauty, of course, is realizing that, when the thing would be, of course, where the course is going, and it's true, is that you suddenly find that, this chair is just as beautiful as a flower, you see, or it's a bit more. You get into those more expanded states where everything is stunningly beautiful, because the beauty is actually blocked by the ego saying that, the ego has internal judgments, like a flower is more beautiful than a chair, you see, but that's already creating a filter system of separation. So you're getting like this huge, you can think of it like a huge clog of belief systems that are within the ego that skew your vision of the world, and also create more levels of separation and fear as you go down, as the thoughts and the belief systems are in there. So anything that is any person, you see, the thing to see is that as you let go of all the ego filter systems, there's a natural intuition, expansiveness and joy which is not restricted to anything, you see. So that's freedom. Otherwise you're always in some level of bondage, you see, of a discrete event or a person or a type of music, which is filtered as having symbolic special meaning. Because ultimately, would you want to be only happy if a certain situation or person or food item is in the room, but you can never be happy if that's not there? And that's obviously restriction. That's obviously a limited life. And the paradox is, as you let go of the ego, then actually your levels of love and beauty and expansion actually increase, which is of course the truth. But it does bring up the fear of letting go. Let's say if I'm very attached to an individual, I get really and if I'm attached to an individual, when I'm not with them, then I'll feel like I'm in a darker place, you see, and then the room brightens up when they're around, and then I feel I'm often in a low mood when they're gone. So that for me is then attachment. I mean, if you're in a high spiritual vibration, you're walking through the park to meet the person, and you're happy in the park. You're in an expanded oneness with the park, and you're happy to see the trees and the birds, and you're happy to see the sky, and and there's just presence going on, beingness. And then there's the person that you're off to meet, and they're absolutely beautiful, and you're enjoying your time with them. But there's no break. There's no break in the you could say in the beingness or the presence or the unlimited expression. There's no break in seeing the beauty in all times. I mean, a person can be a tree, like you're in a park and it's beautiful, and then you see an ugly tree, and you go, oh, you know, that tree's ugly. So you started thinking again. You're into levels of separation. Otherwise, yeah.
But in the tricky part is when you're like things that you like.
Yeah.
Anything that you like, then, say a piece of clothing or a type of music or a type of party or a type of you know, like things that you're just naturally drawn to, or not, or things because you identify with it. It's tricky to let that stuff go because I feel like it's a part of me as I understand it myself. So without that, do you know what I mean?
I think so. Yeah. There are. I mean, the more you let go of your ego filtering systems, the more you get a natural intuition of what's more in alignment with the spirit and what is a preference from the ego. So for me, there's no harm, you know, in making everything meaningless because you're just taking out your belief systems around it. But there's a leap of faith. If you make, let's say I've got a friend and I make them meaningless. Well, what I've done is I've made my own internal belief systems around them meaningless. So naturally, now I'm going to be in the beingness. So you don't know whether the beingness wants to be around. If the beingness wants to be around them, or they're spontaneously that happens to be, you're meeting them regularly, then that's happening out of the beingness, which is the loss of identity, you see. Whereas if you're still holding on to identified belief systems, like this is a really important person, and they're related to my identity. Identity, I mean in the sense of your ego belief systems. You know, and sometimes the ego belief systems might be because they're cool, you know, and people like me because they're cool. Or it might be because, you know, they're a member of this place, you know. So you don't know that. So as you make them meaningless, you're taking out all your belief systems. And then, if there's a spontaneous unfolding to be around that person after you let all this stuff go which you weren't sure you were holding on to, then that is naturally directed by the universe or by God or by your essence or by spirit or by the beingness, you see. But for me, it's like the Course is teaching, because this is higher than the level of 12 steps, this is a level of enlightenment. So with 12 steps, you know, like I go to 12 steps groups, but they calibrate at 540. So they're always going to go that you're an individual relating to other individuals, you see. Whereas at the level of the Course in Miracles or Hawkins or Muji, you're experiencing yourself beyond the identity of a separate individual to get to the beingness. And then, you know, the fear then comes, which is a much higher level fear of the loss of identity. So hence, you know, like, let's say that I like David Bowie, which I don't. I did like him a long time ago, you know, that's irrelevant. But if I say, you know, it's like I'd be willing to make David Bowie and his music meaningless, you see. Once it's, you know, David Bowie's music is as meaningless as this cup, is meaningless as the rain outside or the wind or the traffic. It's totally meaningless. If after I've let go of my internalized meanings, there's still an attraction that seems to be playing, then that's free of all ego. It's been stripped clean of all the ego identifications, perceptions. So the ego naturally has a fear, like, no, I have to hold on to this attachment. because it's my identity, or there might even be hidden payoffs which you're not consciously aware of. Like actually, all the cool people like David Bowie. That's why I'm not consciously aware of it. But the real reason I won't make it meaningless is because I think all the cool people really like David Bowie. Or I'll make up an example. It could be that I was listening. When I was young, I heard other people listening to David Bowie and how great it was, and I did it, and somehow it's become an attachment. But maybe my beingness doesn't like David Bowie. Maybe my beingness likes Tchaikovsky. But by being unwilling, we know from Hawkins' research that everything has an energetic vibration. So some music is like gangster rap music is calibrating very, very low, at the very, very low vibrational level, probably something like hate. Kill everyone and have fun. So, so probably as you're letting go of these identified vibrations, your vibration, you'll find that what seemed like a good attachment, you now make space for that energy field, that vibration, to now that you're a higher vibration, it might be that different people come into your life, or that different music starts to be being played more often. Now I listen, it's one of Hawkins' recommendations, but I listen to it a lot while I'm studying or doing stuff or doing anything, is I listen to Alleluia by Pachelbel's Canon, which had a very, very high vibration. So it tunes you in.
It's not by Robert Gass.
Yes, the Robert Gass one.
Oh, I see.
Robert Gass, Alleluia, Pachelbel's Canon.
Hallelujah.
Alleluia. You can get it free on YouTube, or if you remind me, send me a reminder, because I forget things. I just forget.
Pachelbel, what is it? Sorry.
It's Alleluia by Pachelbel's Canon.
By Tupac.
By what?
By Tupac. Tupac's like a rapper. He's
Tupac's? I don't get that.
He's like a really aggressive rapper.
Oh, right.
When he said slip of the tongue, Tupac.
Did I say that?
I was like, oh, Tupac.
I don't know who Tupac is.
Yeah.
I think he's a rapper.
He's a gangster rapper.
A gangster rapper.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pachelbel was a
But
classic.
he's not a classical music guy.
No.
Okay.
Pachelbel was the composer.
Yeah.
It's the wedding
Oh,
music.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's the wedding.
Oh, it is the wedding.
Yeah. Sort of the wedding music. Sometimes it's played in weddings.
Okay.
And
It's a nice one.
and then they have Alleluia. They created the Alleluia in the background, and the vibration of that was 700. So I guess the guy was when he was doing the music, he was in a spiritual state. So the vibration is on there. The thing with those vibrations is that they tune you in. They kind of shortcut you to that vibration. Why do you want to do that? Because of course we're doing A Course in Miracles. We want to be at that vibration because miracles are more likely to occur. You see, so if I know that Michael Jackson is 180 and Pachelbel's Canon, for example, is 700, that's the highest one he calibrated actually. Alleluia. I can, if you'd let me know, I'll send you the YouTube thing so you can listen to it.
And there's also a list of calibrated, everything, music and everything. But like a couple of music things are on the list as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen one list of stuff it's got like the Bible, the Quran, and a bunch of there were a couple of music.
Yeah, musicians.
I have. We can. If you're interested, we can talk on the phone. I have all the calibrations on me. So different music. So a lot of the pop music is around 200.
The Beatles are really high up.
400, yeah.
The
BG. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's my. I don't like admitting that. One.
Yeah.
Is Michael Jackson only 180?
No, I'm not sure. He probably.
Can we start calibrating things ourselves?
Sure, we can do some later today. Yeah.
The calibration thing's crazy. Like I just listen to Hawkins. He just goes, yeah, penguins calibrated, like box jellyfish calibrated 90, mountain lion calibrated 70.
Yeah.
Yes.
It just goes on and on.
Yeah. Anything below 200 is negative.
I
I think penguins are probably about. Penguins should be around 180.
Penguins
I'm
are
very
cute.
disappointed by that. But aren't dolphins really low down? Like,
Dolphins are out.
that was the one that upset
Dolphins
me.
rape each other.
Yeah, oh, okay, then.
They
they're
what?
low down.
They gang rape each other.
What?
Yeah, Hawkins. Yeah.
And they rape humans too.
Oh, well, that's probably what it is.
Really?
Hawkins.
Hey,
Yeah.
dolphin.
Yeah. So they come out really low, 90. Hawkins made a vague mention. He took a lot of flack from the public
Yeah.
for the dolphins, but they come out. He said they're probably naughty. Like that's what he said.
And that's why.
But that's probably the thing. But they come down pretty low. Intelligence doesn't necessarily mean. Also, it's an average calibration. Like for humans, the calibration before he died for all of humankind was 204, which was good. We're above 200. But it doesn't mean that every human
It's not that good.
is too. No, it was an average. It's an average for the human population as a whole. Well, you're going to get some enlightened teachers at 1,000. Well, not many of them. And the majority are well below 200, like 75% of the planet is below 200. So the spiritual few counterbalance the negativity of the majority, and hence the calibrations. Like I think one enlightened person counterbalanced negativity of about 70 million individuals below 200.
Oh yeah, because that was the other thing that I read the other day, which was it's like when it's 100, when it's 50 on the scale of consciousness, it's 50.
To exponential to the power
Yeah,
10.
then when it goes to 100, it's 100 to the power of
10, yeah.
10. Also,
So it's an exponential thing.
which is
So the enlightened
Huge.
people just counterbalance huge
Huge.
negativity from many below. So in the civilized countries, about 50% are above 200, 50% below, which means that, if you leave your wallet with 50% of the UK, you drop your wallet, 50% might steal it. And 50% will probably give it back to you, you see, above 200 and below 200. So, we can do some kinesiology later on. Kinesiology is fun. Forgot what I was talking about now. So
Music.
Music. Yeah. So also people can change. I'm guessing Michael Jackson in his early career, the vibration of his music would be above 200. And anyway, I'm guessing he might have gone down a bit later on. But anyway, I probably shouldn't say that. But
So it's like strange because it's like that's putting you're saying that his music is that, and then like some people wouldn't really love his music, but some people just love it so much and they get so much enlightenment from it.
well, there's also addiction. You can get enlightenment. I mean, you can get. Okay, so I normally talk about this in the self-inquiry. What is addiction? What is addiction? And Romana, who's over there, is
Just on there.
he's got to be behind me.
Right, just sitting there looking at us.
Look at the daffodil.
Yeah. If you want to see Romana, you have to sort of.
Get tag the YouTube channel.
I've got to have a big poster of Romana behind me.
Just get a cardboard cut.
Yeah.
That would be quite cool.
So, yeah. Yeah, we had a few jokes about this today. And so what is addiction? So Romana gave a good explanation of what addiction is and why certain things really help. For me, this really blew out the fun of addiction when I heard this. It was so profound, and I share it regularly because I think it can't be said enough, which is that if there's something I really want, there's something I really want, basically by wanting a thing, I have like a thought which is like a vibration for wanting the thing. So let's say, let's use that example. I want to listen to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's music is the most awesome thing. But that could be Michael Jackson, it could be a donut, it could be a person, it could be anything.
It could be a clock.
A clock? Yeah, it could be a clock. Maybe if I get... it could be a clock. maybe like a Rolex clock or something. It could be a clock, yeah. I mean, so it's like, it's so exciting.
Wait, clock.
Someone's been doing the Course in Miracles.
Is it by wanting things?
Yeah.
So it's essentially, there's this thought, you know, I want the clock, I want Michael Jackson, I want to meet this person. So that thought is like a vibration. So symbolically, of course, having a huge vibration of not having something, of course, is obvious, it's a lack. Anyway, so I'm not complete now, but when I listen to Michael Jackson, when I finally buy the clock that I've always wanted my whole life, when I get that, of course, life's going to be made. I'm going to be in bliss, you know. So, okay, so let's use Michael Jackson, I think, instead of the clock for the time being. An enlightened person would say clock. You see. You know, I just saw the most beautiful clock. You see, you're enlightened then, I think, already. So, so we listen to Michael Jackson. So as soon as you listen to Michael Jackson, it's like the thoughts stop. You see, the thoughts stop. And as you listen to Michael Jackson, you've just finally got the thing that your thinking was really obsessed about. And you actually have a spiritual experience. You actually get the equivalent of a level of spiritual experience. Like, for example, alcohol cuts off so much of your ego generally. It silences so much of your ecstasy, will silence so much of your ego. Or if you've been obsessed by an individual for so long, it'll silence so much of your ego because you finally got the thing. You're listening to the music, you've purchased the clock, you've met the individual you were obsessed about, or the celebrity, or whatever it may be. So that silence that you get, which is actually the temporary silencing of your thoughts, and then suddenly you're in a beautiful unified oneness experience, you know, where they're beautiful. Actually, you start to disappear. There's a feeling of oneness and bliss and timelessness starts to occur. But then, because it's an addictive thing, very soon the thoughts start creeping up again. Like and as the thoughts start, engagement with the thoughts starts, you know, that initial buzz, sometimes with a person or with some experience, and the buzz may last for a week or two, but eventually it'll lose its aura. After you bought the clock, like buying things, if you know, in the beginning you might be happy for a week, you finally got the Armani coat or whatever it is, but then suddenly it's not carrying on forever. You know, the thoughts go on, actually, you know, I've got other problems, or I need a different coat, or, you know, I need a new Michael Jackson song because the original bliss for the first song is wearing off. But what's really happening is that the ego is starting to chat again, it's starting to talk again. And what is addiction? This is the killer, because the addiction says, the ego will either say you need to listen to another song or a different song or do something else. So the intense spiritual connection or the intense bliss only lasts for a period, and then you get entrapment. What then occurs is entrapment, you know, or why isn't this glass of alcohol the same as my very first glass of alcohol I had 10 years ago? I fell in love with alcohol the very first time I had a glass. It was like the whole world was lighted up and I felt like at ease, like my true self. I was full of life and love. But 10 years later, you try to have 10 glasses of alcohol and it's like it's not working. Or the very first time you listened to Michael Jackson, it was like a bliss. And then 3 years later, you're trying to put on as many Michael Jackson songs as you want and it's not working. You see, it's just not enough, or it's just not hitting the spot any longer. So once you realize that's addiction, it's like it's a false idea that a symbolized object or a symbolized clock or a symbolized visual representation of a person or a noise can be it. You see, because it's the recognition that the beingness is not limited to a sequence or an event or a person or a sound. So it's an unlimited state. It's a presence that's unlimited. So, so then, of course, and to make it sound more appealing, of course, then everything is beautiful. Every moment is presence and beingness and limitation beyond duality, beyond this and that. When you get into self-inquiry mode, then you realize if there's a me that is happy about the clock. Anyway, we'll do a bit of that later. So how can there be a me? You're still not at the level where you're totally free of a me desiring an outcome out there. So we'll do that a bit later, the self-inquiry, which is going to the observer. There's a me that's wants the clock, or there's a me that wants to listen to the music. But what's observing? The me that wants the music. And that is beyond a me needing to have music on or buy a clock. And you break that, and then you're into a higher field of beingness and expansion. So that was a lovely question. But generally, in the early days, there can be a lot of feelings. You know, if you're initially doing spiritual work, there can be huge amounts of feelings coming up. And that's the thing of trying not to engage with the thoughts and being with the feelings. And I've shared, you know, you can go through panic attacks. Oh, with strong feelings, you have to if you have a very intense feeling, you'll have a thought of why you can't feel that feeling through. So when I had panic attacks, it was like, I can't breathe, I'm going to die. So I have to do something to change my feelings quickly. But you have to be a spiritual warrior and go like, I'm willing to go through it, and I was willing to die. But I wasn't willing to die, I was just willing to challenge my illness, because I knew from Hawkins you can go through anything. He went through, if Hawkins is what I'd call a mega guru, because he can go through surgery when they're actually physically chopping bits of his body off without anaesthetic, and use spiritual principles. How you do that is you don't resist, you just let go of thoughts and become one with the experience. And he would sometimes go off into bliss as they were chopping his thumb off. So without anaesthetic. So if he can do that, then feeling feelings, going through panic attacks, having needles stuck into you. I went through, after surgery, I refused all painkillers and I went through the pain, using these techniques of just experiencing the feeling and not labeling it, you see. And you can go through that. So there's nothing you can't go through. And once you go through those, you'll go into a much higher vibration. You see, the first time you go through a panic attack and then until it passes, and try and be through that, you'll never be the same. Your vibration will increase, because you won't be afraid of a panic attack ever again. If you can go through, like I've been through after a general, just not having any more anaesthetic as after my transplant. So so any small pain, aches and pain, is nothing. You hardly notice them, because you get to the higher spiritual connections. You're not really latching on to phenomena. You only feel pain because you're interested in it. You see, you become detached from it. Paradoxically, like drugs, like morphine. When you take morphine, it's like you get a distance from the pain. It's like the pain's over there, and you're kind of like observing the pain over there. Well, of course, that's, morphine has just given you a shortcut, a temporary shortcut through a drug of what consciousness would do. You can do exactly the same thing without any mood-altering substance once you're advanced enough, which is very exciting. So, one of the things is causality, which is what Hawkins talks about a lot, which is that nothing in the world out there causes anything. Everything is actually... So, if you think that morphine, morphine has been imbued from the collective unconscious with certain powered belief systems, so they seem to take you to that spiritual state, and it's a collective. Well, actually, your consciousness can do that as well, through, like you could do it through self-inquiry. So that's the power you're losing through the attachments. Okay.